Welcome to Tales in the Dark, where real-life encounters transform into haunting stories. In Story 8, what starts as a peaceful family camping trip turns into a nightmare. As the sun sets over the serene Whitewater State Park, the shadows grow longer, and an unsettling presence begins to reveal itself. Footsteps in the night, a chilling gust of wind, and a dark figure lurking near the tents will make you question whether the wilderness is truly empty. Get ready for camping at Whitewater. And remember, if you crave spine-tingling tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Now, let's journey into the darkened woods. Story 8. Camping at Whitewater, Minnesota. This paranormal experience happened to me when my family went camping at Whitewater State Park in Minnesota. Whitewater has been a popular destination for generations, drawing visitors with its scenic limestone bluffs, spring-fed streams, and lush valleys. The park was established in the 1930s, a project of the Civilian Conservation Corps, and its trails and campsites have been thoughtfully preserved and updated over the years. We arrived in the early afternoon, greeted by bright sunlight filtering through the trees and casting a warm glow over the landscape. The park seemed peaceful and inviting, bustling with families and hikers soaking in the last days of summer. Nothing about Whitewater looked eerie. In fact, it felt like the perfect escape. The group campsite we reserved had an updated, clean bathroom and shower area, something I appreciated given the rustic setup everywhere else. We parked near the bathroom area, about a quarter-mile from the campsite, with a narrow, wood-chipped path leading to where we'd pitch our tents. The air was thick with the damp, earthy scent of wood chips and soil. Each step along that path gave a faint crunch, and with each glance over my shoulder, it seemed as if the trees along the trail were closing in just a bit more. The campsite itself had a nice pavilion with a wide, open field for tents, perfect for letting the kids play while we set up. That first night was spent organizing food, setting up tents, and exploring the area just beyond the campsite. The kids ran around as we arranged everything, the warmth of the day fading as a soft chill crept in with the evening. After cooking and keeping up with the kids, I was too tired to venture out on the trails or explore other areas of Whitewater. The night passed quietly, save for the endless swarm of mosquitoes, yet there was something about the silence. I thought I heard a distant murmur in the trees, but chalked it up to the wind. That first night at the campsite, after everyone had drifted off to sleep, I was startled awake by the sound of footsteps outside my tent. The steps were slow and deliberate, just light enough to be human, but with a weight that didn't feel quite right. I held my breath, listening as the faint crunch of wood chips shifted beside my tent, then grew softer, moving away toward the tent where my family members were sleeping. I lay there, wide awake, straining to make out any sound or movement, wondering if it was one of my family members heading to the bathroom, or maybe just an animal passing through. But something kept me frozen, listening. For a while, there was only the soft rhythm of footsteps moving back and forth, like someone lingering just out of sight. Then, just as suddenly, the sound stopped. I waited, letting the quiet settle in, until all I could hear was the hum of insects and the loud snoring from the other tents. Telling myself it was nothing, I brushed it off and eventually drifted back to sleep. The next morning, I stepped outside my tent and made a quiet circle around our campsite, checking for any signs of animals foraging through our supplies. I also wanted to make sure another camper hadn't wandered onto our site in the night. That first night at the campsite, after everyone had drifted off to sleep, I was startled awake by the sound of footsteps outside my tent. The steps were slow and deliberate, just light enough to be human, but with a weight that didn't feel quite right. I held my breath, listening as the faint crunch of wood chips shifted beside my tent, then grew softer, moving away toward the tent After we'd eaten, we set out to explore the trails, and the sunlight seemed to melt away the lingering tension from the night. The trails were bustling with visitors, and the park's beauty came alive with each step. the trees towering above, leaves casting playful shadows, and the clear, winding streams adding a calming hum to the background. During the hike, I noticed how full the other campsites were, and I tried to dismiss the strange feeling from last night. Surely it had just been another camper wandering around, maybe lost in the dark, trying to find their way back to their own site. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, the vibrant, welcoming scenery around the campsite shifted, taking on an eerie quality in the fading light. The forest, which had seemed so inviting by day, now loomed dark and silent, its shadows stretching longer, deeper, as if waiting for someone to wander in too far. Every time I glanced at the tree line, I felt that prickling unease, like 100 hidden eyes watching, blending into the darkness. Even with that unsettling feeling, my nerves weren't too high. The campsite was bustling tonight, with more family members joining us for the evening. The air was filled with the happy sounds of children's laughter, conversations, and the clinking of dishes, pulling me back to the familiar and the safe. It was a perfect summer night. The sky was clear, stars scattered across it like a dusting of diamonds, and a warm, gentle breeze brushed over the camp, just enough to keep things cool without a hint of wind. After sunset, I realized I needed to use the bathroom, which was a short walk away near the parking lot. We'd lit up the campsite with lights strung around the pavilion, thanks to the outlet there, but the trail leading to the bathrooms was shrouded in darkness. The path, lined with wood chips cut right through the dense trees, a pitch-black corridor. The bathroom building itself was lit, but the thought of heading there alone made my stomach tighten, especially with that constant feeling that something out there was watching, just beyond the safety of our lights, waiting in the shadows. I couldn't hold off my urge to use the bathroom any longer, so I asked my husband to walk with me. The darkness pressed in around us as we left the glow of our campsite, stepping onto the shadowed trail that led to the bathroom. As we reached the middle of the path, an uneasy chill crept up my spine, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. My skin prickled with goosebumps, the kind that warned of something unseen, something wrong. Out of nowhere, a sudden gust of wind blasted through the trees, fierce and unnatural. It whipped around us with startling intensity, sharp, forceful, and gone as quickly as it had come. We both stopped, glancing at each other in confusion. The night had been still and calm, and both sides of the trail were dense with trees, not a place where wind could move so freely. We continued down the path, but I felt the world start to blur around me. A wave of dizziness swept over me, and before I could say anything, I felt my knees give way. The ground rose to meet me, and then everything went black. After everything went black, I found myself in a strange, foggy state, as if I were suspended somewhere between reality and a dream. I was still on the path, somehow following my husband's figure as he walked just ahead, his back to me, leading me forward. He looked like my husband, sounded like him too, softly urging me to keep up. But something felt wrong. An instinct deep in my chest told me this wasn't really him. My heart pounded as I trailed behind, paralyzed by the sense that I was following a stranger in his familiar shape, something not entirely human. I wanted to stop, to turn and run, but my feet seemed locked on the path. Then, just as suddenly, the fog lifted. I was back in the car, disoriented, my husband's real voice calling my name, trying to wake me. The lingering fear from that shadowy walk clung to me as I blinked back into awareness, realizing I was safe but unable to shake the feeling that I'd crossed paths with something beyond the ordinary. The next thing I remember, I was slumped in the car, my husband's voice urgently trying to rouse me. I blinked, disoriented, as he explained that I'd said I felt lightheaded and needed to rest, then seemed to collapse right there on the trail. He'd barely caught me in time, hoisting me onto his back and carrying me the rest of the way to the car. As he spoke, he told me something else that made my stomach tighten. He said that while he was carrying me, I'd been speaking, but my voice was slurred, almost like I was drunk, even though I had no memory of it. As I became more aware of my surroundings in the car, an intense, unexpected urge hit me. I needed to find a bathroom immediately. Before the strange blackout on the trail, I'd only needed to urinate, but now, an overwhelming sense of nausea bubbled up inside me. When I reached the bathroom, a wave of dizziness overtook me, and I barely made it to a stall before vomiting. I couldn't understand it. I had felt perfectly fine before that sudden, unnatural gust of wind. Unsteady, I walked back to the campsite with my husband, still feeling weak and lightheaded. As soon as we returned, I crawled into the tent, drained, and tried to fall asleep while the others continued to chat and laugh around the fire. But as I lay there, the familiar sounds of the campsite faded into an unsettling quiet, and I suddenly sensed someone, or something, standing right at the entrance of my tent. I opened my eyes slowly, heart pounding, to see a dark, shadowy figure looming over me. The shock rooted me in place, every muscle frozen, and I could barely manage to choke out my husband's name, asking him to come sleep beside me. Sometime in the middle of the night, I was jolted awake again, this time by a presence inside the tent. I felt it before I saw it, a thick, oppressive darkness pressing down on me. As I blinked into the dimness, I saw that shadow figure again, closer now, reaching out toward me. My entire body locked in place, my throat constricting as I tried to scream, to call out, but nothing came. I was trapped in a state of helpless paralysis, struggling internally against that shadowy grip until, finally, I broke free. I managed to shake my husband awake, my voice barely steady, but the rest of the night passed in anxious silence. I lay wide awake until the first light of morning, never daring to close my eyes again. I never shared the full details of my experience with anyone else after we left Whitewater. But that night's events left me certain of one thing. I'd never go camping there again. As we close the chapter on this chilling tale, we're reminded that certain places, once touched by something beyond our understanding, may never be the same. For this family, the tranquility of Whitewater State Park was shattered, leaving them with memories of a night that blurred the line between nature and the supernatural. And sigh. Our journey through these unsettling tales comes to an end, or perhaps it's just the beginning. These stories remind us of a cautionary truth. Sometimes the places we choose for peaceful escapes have long histories as resting grounds for those who have passed. Whitewater State Park, once used as a burial site, holds a mystery within its trails and shadows. A reminder that sites once meant for rest may carry an energy not easily disturbed. When we choose a place to connect with nature, we rarely consider the histories buried beneath our feet, but perhaps we should. Disturbances in such places can attract the attention of unknown presences, especially to those who act like a beacon, drawing the unseen closer. In this story, both husband and wife shared the experience, but only she felt the full intensity of the haunting. Why remains a mystery. A reminder that encounters with the unknown are never predictable. If you've been captivated by these spine-chilling stories and yearn for more journeys into the unknown, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Because here, in Tales in the Dark, the shadows are never far, and the next story is always waiting.